Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Taylor. I'm a director of security here at Versa Networks, and welcome to our webinar today. It's really a demo, right, around what we do with Security Service Edge, right? So you're going to learn more about Versa SSE. We'll see how the solution actually works. Our presenter today is Rob McBride. He is a senior director for sales engineering here in North America. A little bit of housekeeping right before we get in. Number one, I'm getting ready. I will put something into the chat. It is a link to be able to, once again, schedule, deeper demos and deeper dives, with Versa Networks and so forth. All Q&A, please put it into the chat. We will be monitoring that chat as we go through the demo today. So definitely want to know, what your, any questions, right, thoughts, things of that nature. Like I said, definitely pull that up. We will be kicking this off roughly in about 2 minutes from now. We want to give, the attendees a little bit of time to filter in and so forth. But once again, thank you for your time today, and we will be starting here in roughly about 2 minutes. All right, everybody. For those of you who have just joined, once again, right, my name is John Taylor. I'm a director of security here at Versa Networks. We are joined today by Rob McBride, who's our senior director for sales engineering here in North America. The webinar today is going to be around SSE and giving you a demo of SSE as well, right? What is Versa doing with their SSE platform, right? Understanding how everything is built, showing it to you in action, right, from a high level and whatnot. But to basically speed this up, Rob, I'm going to hand this over to you. Everybody, once again, thank you for your time today. Super excited to be here. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, JT. Hello, everyone. As you said, my name is Rob McBride, and we're going to walk through a couple things today. It's been a busy week, and hope everyone's kind of nice and calm and relaxed. I know I am at this point, coming close to the weekend. So, the general premise of what we're going to walk through, of course, is around Secure Services Edge and what we do within that. And I'm going to demonstrate a couple things to you as we kind of outlined. But I want to walk through a couple things with you first to kind of help us all get into a point of context and kind of the mindset associated with all of this. In general, I can't speak for all of you, of course, but I know that there are a lot of customers I do interact with, as well as partners, that when they evaluate how they want to kind of tackle the modern problem associated to looking at from a security posture assessment, enforcement, even network connectivity perspective, looking at from the defense angle as an example, there's a lot of platforms or products and services out there that are being utilized and acquired and put inside the enterprise architecture as kind of like a standalone function. And it does create this kind of fragmented architecture in a sense, right? One of the analogies I like to use, if you imagine yourself a business that has a standalone product for every one of these functions and services, and imagine every one of them talks a different language and looks at things a lot differently, things become very, very fragmented and complex that really impairs your ability to do points of correlation and drive a level of simplicity in order for you to drive a point of security in a very advanced kind of a way. And so within that, one of the things we like to say is that that sprawl really creates gaps within what your overall objective is, right, from a security perspective, right? Again, taking that analogy I mentioned with respects to things like Someone's CASB might look at application for Office 365 in a specific way from an identification perspective, and perhaps maybe the the DLP engine is looking at it a little bit differently. And so we've got two different kinds of points of view, and it creates a little bit of gap with respect to how do you translate that and correlate that to ensure the appropriate action associated to things around identity, posture, and other points of control are being done appropriately relative to what you want to do from a defense angle. So these are some of the challenges that we can argue really kind of drive that point of obviously looking at it from a defensive depth, but there's various different gaps that you need to be very, very mindful of when you start looking at how you want to change your security architecture for tomorrow to address whatever it is that you're doing from a modernization angle or SaaS perspective and connectivity in the remote workforce. From what we do, hopefully this is just a little bit of recap again to, the previous webinar is kind of a, this is really where we're kind of building that from and beginning to do these demo days for. But at the end of the day, you can see the quote from our CEO, Mr. Kelly Ahuja, where, our general objective and strategy is really to kind of simplify the method of how you as a business are able to protect and connect your users and your devices to the things that need to be used, right? Workloads, applications, locations, basically from anywhere and any time. And be able to do that in a very comprehensive and unified way so that there's not only a means of protection that's driven by least privilege access, zero trust oriented type of protection, but also to ensure that means of connectivity from anything to anything, right? Devices and users to applications, right, is being done in a very secure way, but not make it overly complex and overburden you from an IT management angle, security operations perspective in order to drive that. And so within that, the general philosophy for us is to help you protect, connect, and then overall simplify your means of being able to, again, protect and connect your users, as well as your devices across the business. When we look at it, a much larger kind of spread around other things that we do or value propositions, so I don't want to go through all of these, right? But, when you take the context around minding the gap, as I had mentioned earlier, right, and fragmentation associated to, multiple different kind of bespoke products and things of that nature, right? One of the key value propositions or key things that we drive, which hopefully you'll be able to see from a demonstration today and me being able to convey that to you, is really this concept of what you see in the upper right, Versa One, right? A universal oriented platform that really drives this idea around, meeting that strategy and that vision from our CEO, right? Being able to simplify how you're protecting and connecting your users and devices anywhere to anything and anytime. And so that drives four kind of high-level pillars around how do you ensure there's a means of universal connectivity so that no matter what it is that you need to protect or control, right, can actually get into the network based off of certain types of privileges. How does that then feed into, right, a platform that's unified, right? A common platform that is aware and has the capabilities from, simple zero trust identity posture assessment to advanced SaaS application controls around CASB, but having it all punched into a common engine, a single engine. So everybody talks the same, policy is the same, data models are the same, correlation's a lot faster and simpler and much more efficient, where now security is inbuilt from all those functionalities to every endpoint within that broader platform or fabric that you want to utilize in order to kind of meet your security business needs. To, of course, as we kind of move more into the future, how do we look at things from, added intelligence that can drive better insightful information for data correlation, threat detection for zero-day attacks, and so on and so forth. And these are the fundamental pillars of capabilities or value props, if you will, from a Versa perspective, where we're able to take this and offer a variety of different solutions. Today's focus is really going to be around the unified SASE component, which is really about taking all of that together and delivering it to you as a common one platform, right? So that you can very simply protect and connect your users and devices, applications anywhere and anytime, right? Kind of see the thing there? When we look at it from a Versa kind of component or an architecture angle, right? Again, just kind of a recap, hopefully from previous sessions or conversations you might be having with us, right? So you're not losing the idea around defense in depth, right? The capabilities that you're looking for to drive least privilege access, right? Around from a ZTNA principle to doing internet or web-based protection to providing application level control and security enforcement from a next generation firewall to looking at zero-day threat protection from an ATP to protecting your business assets from a data loss prevention perspective, and then enacting controls, say from a SaaS connectivity or SaaS access, right? Things like go to YouTube, can't comment, are all part natively of the platform, right? So these are not bespoke little services or components or things that are deployed, which really kind of closes that gap to kind of bring it home, to really drive and really be pushed as Versa One, a universal platform that can provide all these capabilities, right? Defense in depth with advanced security controls in order to provide you flexibility in how your users and devices are connecting, but also being protecting to ultimately protect you. From a global angle, just to kind of let it be known, right, from our fabric, when we look at it, you'll get a little bit of a graphic on it as I kind of move forward to go into this demonstration is, we have global presence, right? As you see on the note here, roughly over 90 points of presence across the globe, which really gives you a lot of deep reach if you're a global customer. For those that might not be in North America, my area of focus, right? And needing to actually provide this distributed cloud security architecture that you want to utilize in order to get your remote users, hybrid workforce, drive identity, as well as least privilege access from a zero trust angle as your primary strategy, have control points for SaaS applications, and be able to do, what it amounts to is adaptive access control based on where these people are and what they're actually doing. We can do this across the globe based off our overall presence, and this all operates as a common fabric, as you see here, okay? So unlike some others, architectures potentially you might be looking at, right? They might be kind of separate pillars or separate kind of fabrics into their own. We ensure that this common global infrastructure is actually a common full mesh fabric, which really provides a lot of benefits when you start looking at intercontinental services, best path selection when we start looking at our value from an SD-WAN being also integrated into what we actually provide, which really is around quality assessment and being able to determine how do I actually get to the application across the best possible means, driven by the lowest latency and loss is one very simple definition and example of that. But what it also does provide is if you look at it from a common unified platform, right, you can have this in-depth security provided by this common solution for not only your data centers, your branch offices, various remote offices, your devices in an agentless way in your cloud, and obviously for us humans as an example, like myself, road warrior, moving around all the time, providing anywhere access, but in a very controlled and methodical manner. Now, to that point, to kind of take it to the next level, right? There's opportunities and there's different means and how you want to control where this inspection's being done, and there's a lot of flexibility across that. We can have SaaS applications, internet traffic being sent to the fabric across SD-WAN natively from your offices. We can then actually provide that same level of threat assessment, threat protection, policy infrastructure for those users, right? As they kind of move away from the office and now connect into the closest gateway to them, no matter where they're at in the world. So whether they're connecting in Pete's Coffee, maybe going to Dunkin' Donuts at the airport, their mom's house, connecting in and then being able to identify what's the closest gateway or closest security enforcement point that's going to identify me and then provide a means of protection and control for the business associated to who I am, what I'm using, where I am, and at what time of the day, so to speak, that it's actually happening on. The other point around all this, of course, is that the fabric provides a lot of value utilizing SD-WAN, right? This idea of, okay, well, you have this global network. How do I use that network in order to ensure that my workload access from either an office or a user is actually being driven across this idea around the best connection? And so that's one of the other elements around this universal thing that you should really consider and look at as your evaluations around how can you ensure that you're providing me with the best means of getting to my workloads that I just migrated into the cloud. And this is one of the other kind of pillars or elements when you start looking at things from a unified perspective, which of course comes down to also from an orchestration and management angle that you also need to evaluate and things of that nature. So from today's perspective, right, to kind of take a quick pause and so on and so forth, is my objective, and hopefully, we'll get through this and walk through this. I'd love for any kind of questions or any thoughts and things of that nature around, or even commentary, if you will, right, whether in the chat or even afterwards with respects to kind of where you're actually at within this journey. But from a Versa angle, I just want to be able to demonstrate and highlight a couple of these points, right? The ability of what we do and how we do it and the tools that we use in order to provide zero trust at a high level, right? That's not only going to provide the enforcement and control based off the identity, but also be able to do adaptive access control associated to either posture or location in order to provide you a means of a way to kind of control application access or network access associated to that, to the variety of different tools that we have inbuilt into this platform, right, connected to all of the Versa gateways and endpoints and clients. It really gives you the ability to really look at things from a threat monitoring angle, look at points of compromise, where are you being attacked at, the reporting aspect of it, as well as being able to use that to do some troubleshooting, right? When you start working with Sally or Timmy, who might be remote and complain that they can't get to Office 365 when they're connected to the client, as an example. And within all that, you'll be able to see the policy architecture, how we do it, how simple it is to not only do it for clients, but also clientless. And be able to really kind of drive value from you from an IT angle to kind of unburden some things as we walk through. Now, as we look kind of for tomorrow, in a sense, right, we'll be having these series. I think currently right now our schedule is once a month, right? Be mindful. You should have gotten a notification, not only in chat, but also by email, that if you really want something more private, something very catered to a use case for yours, or to have us demonstrate how we might be solving a particular problem that you might be currently having, or complexity or an architecture, if you will, that you want to think about, we're happy to do a private demonstration for you. Just click that link. We'll set that call up and work with you guys. But from a future angle, we'll want to go in a little bit deeper than I'm going to go into today, associated to, you know, adaptive access control. What is it? Like, what can Versa do? What's the level of flexibilities and kind of advanced capabilities that can be done, to bring that up a stack, in a sense, around looking at what can be done from a CASB angle, a DLP perspective. You know, how do we analyze and set up rules and profiles to look at specific data patterns, right, in order to, you know, identify sensitive content and, you know, bribe other access points of control for, you know, Office 365, SharePoint, Box, and other things of that nature. To keeping in line with the thought around a unified platform, of course, is around, you know, even show you how very rapidly you can actually not only look at having a global security fabric, right, from a Versa SSE perspective, but very quickly and very easily attach an SD-WAN branch, Versa SD-WAN branch, into that fabric, where now you can like leverage that across all of your site estates, right, and be able to have some more advanced controls around where applications are being inspected and controlled from a point of egress and things of that nature. And last but not least, but of course not limited to, as we kind of continue our thematics on this, right, but the idea around advanced threat protection, and of course the idea around zero-day threat detection and protection. And so with that, I kind of jumped on the next time kind of a thing, wanted to do a demo. What I'm going to do now is going to jump into our orchestrator, or our portal that we call Concerto, and kind of walk you through a little bit here. And then I'm going to go through and show you various different examples of zero trust in action, adaptive access control, and the reporting, as much as I had mentioned earlier. So with that, give me 1 second. So first and foremost, as you can see here, through this session, I'm actually connected in utilizing a Versa ZTNA client, or our SASE client. And as you can see here, it identifies, you know, who I'm connecting into, where I'm connecting. For the purposes of today, I'm going to be connecting into London, in order to kind of just drive some other points of policy that you'll actually see. Through this, now I'm going to walk in through and show you the other examples, but the main core or not the core of it, but one of the means of access, right, of three, as it relates into the Versa SSE fabric and services, of course, is there's a client-oriented way, clientless, as well as from an SD-WAN branch perspective, or branch angle, as one mechanism relative to all of that. So let's kind of jump in. All right. So this is going to be your view as a customer, okay? The common portal view that really provides you, you know, not only from a dashboard and reporting and troubleshooting tools that I'll go into, but also, right, just kind of highlight, you're also SD-WAN control too as well. One of the main things I like to highlight before I start digging into a variety of different things is really just give you an idea of the general mechanisms and flow, or your actual operation journey associated to really aligning and doing things within the Versa ecosystem. And what that is really around this idea of a guide, right? This kind of lighted path, as some people like to call, but ultimately really ensuring that as you interact with the system, whether you're an advanced operator or, you know, perhaps level 1 or what have you, there's an effort on our part to ensure there's a mitigation associated. Oh man, what do I do? Where do I go? And it actually really starts with you actually becoming a customer first, and we just tell you right at the get-go, hit this button and you go do these. But for everything we do, you can kind of see the logic behind all this, right? Obviously, everything's around what do I match on, and there's a lot of different points or components that you can actually match on, from identity, application, posture on the actual device from an endpoint angle, location, time of day, and then ultimately driving to your policy and things of that nature. But I wanted to touch on this first, just to kind of show you this idea, this general thematic, which you're going to see anyway as I go through policy, relative to this idea around the journey and steps, right, to ensure that you're never lost. One of the great things associated to being able to drive this point of uniformity or unification associated to not only networking as well as security, but all the SASE services, really comes down to the point of being able to consolidate and correlate all that data into a common dashboard. It is very important to note, however, that of course that we can actually have this all exported and provided and integrate to your existing SIEM in case you're utilizing some other platform to correlate a lot of other different points that might be out of this context. But we converge and consolidate all the data points from Versa into a common, obviously, threat dashboard, right, as well as a networking dashboard. And the first element of that, of course, is being able to identify, who are my users, who are there, being able to look at a variety of different useful kind of graphs to understand, like, where are people connecting, any points of, success and things of that nature. Too, very importantly, this idea around looking at things from a digital experience perspective, as I just kind of wait for the screen to load. Kind of jumping in here because I feel like the visibility component is very, very important, right? And it kind of highlights to you some of the information that's being captured and utilized at your fingertips in order to really kind of determine, the experience of your users or even potentially devices. And so digital experience comes with our product. And what it actually provides you is a little bit of an insight associated to the users who are actually connecting. And as we kind of drill down here, you see me when I'm connected with the client that I showed you. And we're actually capturing statistics and metrics actually from the client in real time and then storing that over a period of historical spread. And so as you can see here for myself, right, apparently I've got a not great experience score because apparently I might have been experiencing some form of latency or loss over somewhere. Apparently it's being identified that my device has had some issues in the last 7 days where my CPU apparently was high and was using a lot of memory. From a networking angle, it seems to be good, at least from a wireless perspective, as signal strength and things. And as you can see here, right, we can start seeing, what levels of conditions or experience, not only from a human factor, right, but what's been happening over time associated from this user connecting in to a specific location. What's that level of, loss or wireless degradation to even device degradation that was actually occurring? And why I like to highlight this is because, I've been a part of some calls with customers and things where, trying to analyze, why does it seem slower sometimes and connected to an application, and being able to utilize this helps identify a couple of things. It was one time where I identified, hey, you might want to get a little bit closer, right, from a wireless perspective, because, you've got really, really poor signal, which is really going to be capping your overall throughput, right, from a wireless angle at that moment in time, which is really impairing your ability to get to this specific application. So there's a lot of wealth of data that helps provide it from a troubleshooting perspective, but really touches on the level of visibility and capabilities, if you will, that the client of information being sent. Now we take that a little even step further, and there's various different SaaS apps that are also being monitored by the client that are being used by the user or the client itself, but also then gives you a hint around, hey, maybe there's a specific application, a very specific SaaS app that's experiencing an issue. And so here we provide metric data associated, how long did it take to connect, how long to look up from DNS, what's the overall score for that user from the location that they're at, and then be able to drill down into that a little bit even further, right? We can see that for this specific path, right, we actually identified that, due to DNS latency, right, and SSL latency, there were some application issues. And we noticed that coming out of the gateway to the application as a result of the path that it was actually taken. And we can look at it on a per hop by hop basis, right, depending on, the levels of responsiveness. But then look at the overall scoring, right, over time. So we can begin to narrow this down potentially to a trouble ticket. And to a very specific moment in time, they identify, hey, maybe for all users, Salesforce was having a problem and things of that nature. And so this is one tool associated to troubleshooting and monitoring, right, which then helps facilitate that idea around being able to simplify how you're needing to manage the solution potentially might be rolling out for your users. Now, moving forward a little bit and kind of driving down to like the client and so on and so forth. Clearly, it's obvious. I've got a lot of stuff already configured. When you look at the dashboard, we break things out in the idea around what's public, what's private, what's the idea around how clients actually access and various different policies, and of course, other things that might be relevant, if you want to do some selective decryption and things of that nature. What I'm going to walk through on the policy front, just so you see it as I log into the users here in a moment, right, is I've got obviously my own, right? I just wanted to make sure I had no friction relative to doing this with you guys. But I have this idea around, if marketing connects and they've got their firewall off, right? I don't want them to be able to connect into the fabric because of some means of adjustment. Maybe a threat actor, right, infiltrated their laptop and through some form of malicious script or malware that was on, it actually disabled their actual firewall. And so from a marketing angle, just in this example, I want to say, hey, if that actually happens, you can't connect. To being able to drive different methods of connectivity based off of users, right, in their groups that can be tied to their device itself, as already mentioned, but really just showing this identity-oriented approach around control around different means of access and other things of that nature, okay? There's a lot of other things that we can do here that really give you kind of advanced controls around what do I want a user to be able to do. In this example here for my contractor, what I've actually identified here is that I've said, for these 3 applications, all right, just go direct internet. And so what this provides you is this ability, as an example to it, right, is to not only utilize application ID, but actually be able to define native applications potentially associated to maybe your flavor of installation you're doing for Windows or Linux or Mac, and say anything from this program I don't really care about, or the reverse. Anything from this program I want to always ensure it goes across the tunnel so it actually hits my security perimeter outside before I actually get inside my network, and so on and so forth. The point of all that dialogue was to show the differentiation relative to base off identity and their posture, and differentiated levels of control that you can actually provide based off the user on how they connect to the security fabric and actually what actually gets sent over it. To then tying that down into this idea around when you get into this security perimeter that is not yet on my network per se, what is the level of controls I can do for private application connectivity, right? And being able to differentiate that based off of their identity and their role and even their posture. In my example, I let engineering get access to the file and web server that I'll be utilizing. Marketing, right? You'll see the different posture here where I'm utilizing URL filtering even for private applications to then say, hey, you can't actually get to the file server, but actually get to the web server. And from a contractor angle in this example, I take it to another level and I say, hey, not only can I do URL filtering for this private application control, my enterprise app, but I'm also going to actually look at things from a data loss prevention perspective, because I want to make sure that contractor, when they access that file server, they're actually not downloading any of that specific sensitive content that might be up there. The explicit example here will be some PCI DSS-oriented data. So then looking at things from an internet protection perspective angle, right, where now we start really looking at SaaS applications. And again, philosophy is the same, right? Based off of who you are and what you're doing and where you're going, I want to enact different levels of controls. And so I'll always show marketing has a different levels of capabilities for YouTube. That'll be different for other users. From an internet perspective, for today, I won't go into the DLP part. We're going to save that for that next time. To just a general default protection posture associated to non-YouTube oriented applications. And as you can see here, right, open that up so you understand and get a look at how easy it is from an enforcement selection perspective, or how, hey, this is what I want to do, right? We have a lot of predefined profiles. You can create your own custom profiles. And we actually make things very, very simple from a drop-down perspective and be able to provide a lot of various different points of enforcement that then get chained as we begin to inspect those services and traffic, and then being able to tie things like CASB, DLP, ATP, and the RBI, which are things that you'll actually see at a different time. So let's kind of look at this real fast, right? So first guy we'll jump into, remember who this is. So this is the engineering user, okay? So the engineering user is already connected, okay? So as one example, just so I can begin to show some of the level differentiation, and then I'm going to correlate this over into the analytics side so you can see the live data that's actually happening. So here, engineering user can obviously get to the web application as it kind of comes up, right? And, the pantheons of the demo world hopefully are being kind to me, right? And we see my internal app. We see this access over here to the file server that's private. This is all as a FYI to you, right? Also utilizing a private DNS server that's utilized. Here, as you can see here, I have a private server sitting off within the data center, and I can then obviously have that be my point of resolution as opposed to using something public here. The other things I can do here from a private angle based off of this, either as a broad security posture or a broad security policy, is obviously do some points of protection associated to things around a malware angle, being able to prevent, either their uploading of that or their downloading of malicious content. Clearly, I'm trying to download it, but the reverse is also true in case I wanted to, inadvertently, I uploaded a piece of malicious malware. The system is actually detecting that and actually preventing that from actually happening. And in this case here, you're seeing the connections actually being reset. One other thing that you'll see, across all users being able to identify, looking at sensitive oriented web content, right? Financial services or medical, of course, very common to maybe do some selective decryption on that in order to then, not inspect that traffic from a point of privacy. To doing some other things here. I think that my gaming is actually going to come through once the web page loads. So apologies, I am punching traffic from California to London. So just give it a little time from a latency angle. All right, so here we see Bank of America loaded up. Here we'll actually see that from an SSL perspective, right? I'm not decrypting it. Went to the gaming site here. You can see that this was actually being verified by the infrastructure in and of itself. And obviously very common stuff here, really going to identify and do things very common from the URL filtering angle that are being provided by these secure web gateways or Versa cloud gateways based off their identity and so on and so forth. The last little one that I'll actually do here is just kind of show how based off of user, and I'm going to utilize the engineering user first to do this, is looking at things from a CASB angle. So I'm going to log into YouTube as you see me do. Hopefully it's got my username cached so I can kind of look at the videos here really quickly. And then, show some of the things that are actually happening there. Of course, it's not cached. Again, Pantheon gods, demo sometimes. So as I'm waiting for this kind of the load in so I can actually log in, I hope some of this is kind of making a lot of sense to you guys. There's some more that I'm going to go through, of course. And then be able to, hopefully this drives you to want to actually have something maybe a little bit more private. We're very, very catered to your specific business and technical needs that we can then actually walk through and give you a very specific demonstration that's very tailored and catered toward you. So here I'm just going to log in with one of my, my apologies. Oops. So while that's going, I'm going to tee up one of my other clients here. All right, so this one here is going to be my marketing user. Okay. And so for my marketing user, right, to show a little differentiation associated to what can actually happen, I'll open up a fresh window here. So my marketing user has a policy that says, I'm not actually allowed to get to the file server. And so here I'm accessing a private application, right? From a remote user, and now I'm actually presenting a form of URL filtering based off of that because I have web services internal. To now looking at things from a context of what can I actually access. And so here, I have a web server, right, that they can actually access and do their things from a marketing angle, potentially whatever rights and so on and so forth. While also, of course, doing things around the lines of, internet-based malware protection, and then obviously from a YouTube angle that I'll also get to here in a second. But also be able to provide that same level of threat protection as we look at things around, saying nobody can get the gambling and things of that nature. So I think this was not logged in either, so apologies, right? Kind of timed out on me, so we'll just kind of let it go through. Let me sign in. And we'll show you the levels of different controls and other things that are happening from a behind the scenes perspective that you can actually then leverage to ensure that you're actually utilizing across all of your user base. So this guy should be finished here. Let's pop on over to the other guy. So here. What you'll notice here is that obviously I can look at videos. Okay, so I'm logged in. I'm not doing any sort of user constraint profiles that you can actually tie to CASB. But here, let's just look at video. Right, the first video that popped up. Turn this off. Obviously, I'm allowed to watch the video. Okay. What you notice here is, though, I can't actually comment on it, and I can't comment on it as a result of me being in engineering. It's just the posture I decided to push. At the same token, I don't want to let engineering be able to, oops, it actually worked that time. So a little foobar happened there. So let's focus on the commentary perspective, right? I'm not able to actually make comments, right? And I'm logged in as engineering going into YouTube. And so if I move into my marketing user here, right? Once we go into the home and start looking at videos, you see the different method in how YouTube is actually being represented. So I'll let the page load. We see that the gambling page was also blocked from a marketing angle. I'm going to come in here and try and download a piece of malware. Looks like I'm trying to go to a bad video. So here I'm trying to download. I get this is a very known signature and things of that nature, right? But here again, right, I'm detecting that. I'm preventing that from actually occurring. I would jump into the YouTube perspective now, go home. Let's me. Apologies. Sometimes these things don't work as smoothly as you want them to. Let's kind of take a look at, I don't know, let's look at the bird feeder, shall we? Now, obviously, you saw the behavior on the engineering perspective, and I think one of the immediate things that you saw is obviously everyone's able to watch the video, okay? We look at here, and you actually see that marketing is actually able to comment. So this is a form of being able to demonstrate what can you do from a CASB angle and being able to look at a particular application, and based off of who you are, you have different privileges around what people want to do, right? Maybe all of your organization, nobody can go to Facebook, or go to Facebook. I don't want you to do actions in Facebook, and so on and so forth. But here, just a quick demonstration to show you that based off of different users, I have different types of privileges in accessing a specific application, say in this example, from a YouTube angle. I'm going to come back to the marketing user here in a minute. And what I'm actually going to do from a marketing user is I'm going to walk you through the idea associated to the mention I made around, looking at adaptive access control, right? So let's pretend that some threat actor came in and ended up doing something and actually ended up, some script ended up disabling my firewall as an example. And so now at this point in time, we can see my firewall is disabled. Now let's say that, the marketing user actually ended up disconnecting, or was disconnected or moved right after all this event had occurred and decided to log into the network from somewhere. Well, in my condition, I want to utilize this as a point of reference to identify that, hey, if your firewall is off, I don't want to let you connect in. And so that's the example here that I'll walk through. And for speed purposes, I'm disconnecting and reconnecting just simply to allow for faster means of data collection, and that data collection being shared with the security fabric around the posture of the particular device. As you see here, this can take anywhere from 15 minutes or longer. Our default timer is 15 minutes, but we can actually have that tuned a little bit faster for you, if you will, too, as well. Okay. So here we'll just do this, right? Just kind of letting it go through its system. You can see here that obviously the firewall is actually off. And now what should happen based off the policy is that, again, right, the condition here is some threat actor came in, hacked me or hacked marketing, loaded something up on marketing, something happened in the background from the malicious malware that ended up potentially maybe disabling the firewall on the device. And so for me, from an IT angle, I don't want them to connect now. And so here, right, the user is going to try and connect, and we should get a message that says, you cannot connect to the VPN. Please contact your administrator. Okay. And all of this is driven by the fact that the firewall has been disabled, and so on and so forth. And this data, or this collection of the endpoint, being sent to the security infrastructure, and then is using that as a point of reference for adaptive access control. Now, there'll be another demo that'll just go so much more into this. It's a heck of a lot cooler than what I did, but just kind of restore it here, and I'll move on over to my other last user and look at analytics, if you will. and then we'll close it out. Sorry. Okay, flip that guy and let that go. And we'll come back to them and let them connect again here in a second. All right, so let's go and let them connect and kind of restore them. Now we can actually utilize this same theology around when I am connected and my posture adjusts, right? Change the rules that are around in regards to what means of access and points of control. I was going to do that, but from a timing perspective, we'll save that for the adaptive access control demonstration that will be actually provided. So last but not least, here is my last user. This user is my contractor user. And what I want to demonstrate here is the idea around, the point around DLP. All right, so here, the contractor, as an example, right, I'm going to have them connect in. We'll access private applications and public applications, and then show that even from a private application perspective, right, we don't have to use DLP only for going to a SaaS app, right? We can utilize that to analyze our private applications and ensure that there is no loss of integrity or theft associated to any sort of highly sensitive data, of course. So here, we'll use this. Go here. Let it load. So memory serves, they can't get to the web server. They can get to the file server. There we go, right? So again, differentiation based off of who they are. They can get to the file server. So when we get into the file server, let's have them try and download, I think it's this data that I want to try and get. All right, so I'm going to try and download some PCI data. Right. Here, I'm already attempting to download, and obviously you see this notification popping that says, hey, you can't do this because of various different policy. And then we'll actually see that it's going to attempt and is actually going to time out, and it's going to not actually complete itself. Next, I'll then go to a public app, SaaS app, right, or a public application per se. That's not sitting within my enterprise in and of itself. So let the page load. Close this out here. Well, you see that it's still trying to download, so it's actually being prevented by the infrastructure despite my desire to actually download it, if you will. Give me a moment here. Log in. Okay, so here, this is something outside, right? This is a SaaS app, public accessible. If you're a customer, you're probably already aware of these uploads and download sites that we share data with you with sometimes. So I'm actually going to try and download it from here too as well. And it should be prevented as a result of DLP policy kicking in. Sometimes notifications don't pop up as a result of how quick they are within succession to each other. But obviously you see here now, not only from a private perspective, but also a public perspective, being able to prevent based off of a contractor's means of access and being able to prevent their ability to actually download some sensitive content. So that's all fun and games, right? You see all the action being put in play, but let's actually take a look at that from a reporting angle, right? So I opened up from a visibility perspective. Now I want to kind of close it out with a visibility perspective, right? So we're going to be able to take a look at all those actions and things that I did. Just give a second here for my screen to load. Again, apologies. A little bit of latency from where I'm at in San Diego, trying to get to London. Yep. Letting pages render. Oh, time to grab a drink. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. If not, feel free to reach out to us. Utilize that link also that you see within the chat to actually actually ask any sort of questions and things of that nature, in case you have any, or again, obviously set up some meetings. Obviously, the demo part is causing me a little bit of challenges in order to kind of render some pages. So apologies around the latency and the like. So we'll go back to it. Here we go. Again, apologies. So let's kind of take a look. I did a couple of different things that happened, right? So the first one I want to look at is I'm not going to look at from an endpoint perspective, okay? So you saw me disable the firewall, send that data back. We can see the actual timestamp associated marketing trying to connect in. And actually it was from an EIP check, and this is what actually was matched on, and so on and so forth. Does this gives an idea around if there's certain types of things from a EI or endpoint information profile perspective that are actually being matched on and triggered. Obviously, we're logging that and timestamping that, mapping it to the specific user, and obviously the private IP as it relates to the tunnel from the client perspective to the gateways. Now we can then take that and then start looking at things from a security perspective. If we start looking at broader things from whether points of compromise or interesting data that we want to correlate around what's being utilized from web to other points of threats and things of that nature, to then even be able to kind of dig down into that and so on and so forth, which is another common thematic associated to how and what we present to you from a tool-based perspective, which really gives you the ability to not only see the events and have that correlated to something else, but then being able to drill down into that even further to identify who it was, what they were doing, where were they coming from, what time, what were they coming through, and then even be able to further float into that. This specific session only has one log, but then be able to see associated to that particular session from that user, is there anything else related associated to that specific session? In this case, there's nothing, but this then gives you the full information that this can be exported and utilized in other tools, or also provides you just real-time looking at it, right? A level of rich data. Now, when we go back and we look at, say, other things around the threat filtering perspective, you saw me accessing a couple things, right? We looked at gambling here, showing us from a, what profile was actually being hit that's applied, what was the user, what was our action that we actually took. And kind of being able to follow this and watch it and go through. And again, right, I can dump down into it even further, and I can actually see there's another related log to that very specific session, and being able to look at other things from other points of interest. As I dig a little further in the threat filtering angle, right, just kind of back out here, right, we can look at CASB, right? We saw me take a couple of different actions. There were things that were utilized. I was only watching on YouTube, so I can look at it holistically like this. And I can look at all the actions, and I can say, hey, marketing was watching a stream, they're allowed. What I didn't see, and what you didn't see, actually, I was don't let them search, right? But just kind of let that happen in the background. To other actions that were actually happening here, right? We blocked their search again, trying to find the engineering user, and we can see a variety of different other actions that were actually happening. I can take that up a level, granted, if I just want to look at what was being blocked, and we can kind of look at the block and the actual users associated to them here. We're doing a lot of blocking on the search. And here we can actually see that for myself from earlier. I was trying to do a share based off my username, and it was actually also blocked too as well. Last but not least, we break things down on protection from public as well as a private perspective. But I want to look at here is from a DLP angle, right? So you saw me access a private server, and we actually saw me access a public server. And then obviously here, right, I can then look at the specific event and identify, well, who was it? And from a who was it perspective, what were they doing? And so we see the contractor, the specific type of component that was being matched, which is really around content analysis, right? What did we actually do? We blocked it. What pattern did we actually match? Well, we saw a card holder's name, right, that matched over to our profile from a PCI DSS perspective. And actually, here's the file name. So now understanding of what did this user try to get on this potential application that I have access or control to, and things of that nature. And then this actually then provides me a holistic look if I want to kind of look down further into the logs and so on and so forth around, is there something that's more interesting from a behavior or a pattern that's actually happening around trying to access this, and things of that nature. And so this is from the private server. And of course, you saw I can actually dig this down into even the public server, right, here too as well. Okay. With that, I think that's a healthy amount for today. There's a lot of stuff that we'll actually cover from, a futures perspective. Actually, last a little bit, given that I got roughly about a few more minutes, I just want to highlight here one of the other things that we actually do provide to you as well from a troubleshooting monitoring angle. A lot of the stuff I touched on was really on the SSE side, showing the client, showing some of the log hits, capabilities, CASB, and DLP. Some of the troubleshooting and capabilities and monitoring available from a security perspective, looking at, points of compromise, attacks, events that are interesting and correlating that. But you can also do this on the networking angle too as well. And this really talks to that unified platform side from a reversing angle. And obviously you can see here, I have a gateway down, right? I did something bad last night. So that's why I go to London. So when I go into London, right now, this is actually incredibly useful to you. Okay, so as you begin to not only troubleshoot things from a security point of view, it's also important to understand things from a networking angle. What's actually happening with this gateway or gateways that I'm utilizing from Versa Security Fabric? What can I look inside of them? I can understand points of availability that might match to my SLA, right? I can look at utilization for myself, right? And things of that nature. I can start looking at applications. What are the applications actually being seen on this particular gateway? Now, let me take that a little further and actually see what's actually happening live. When I look at things at live, I can now begin to nail down a specific session that might be correlating to something as a debug session or a troubleshooting call I'm doing for Timmy or Sally, right? That I looked at from the digital experience monitoring perspective, saw a couple log hits from a threat perspective, and I now want to actually analyze that specific session and actually find it and actually really see what's actually happening deeper inside of the Versa solution in order to be able to analyze and take a look at this, right? Are they hitting the appropriate internet protection policy or the private application policy and so on and so forth, right? And what's actually happening from this angle, okay? So this actually provides a lot of wealth of info, right? Relative to being able to now further dig down into the actual traffic, right? Hopefully you don't ever have to do that, right? But in the instance that you need to, there's a plethora of tools from historical reporting, live monitoring, being able to dig down at a low level, even from a session perspective, and have a lot of data that's actually already pre-correlated for you that you can then obviously then, of course, punch this out to, if there's a third-party collector that you are then doing some other data points of collection and then further points of correlation. Well, I hope that this was useful for those that have been on the call, and for those that will probably lunch to this offline. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. If you have any questions you don't want to put in the chat, but just send it over to the link, click it. We'll reach out. We'll set up something private if that's of your interest. But do look out for our further demo days and looking at other advanced topics around adaptive access control a little bit more deeply, CASB, DLP, ATP, and then looking at things from an SD-WAN perspective in regards to how quickly and useful that can, quickly and simply that can actually be done. With that, John, over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Rob. Really do appreciate it, everybody. Appreciate your time on the for the session today. Once again, there is a link in the chat. It has been been put in a few times, right? If you want to see a full demo, if you want to see something a little bit more customized, right, to what your use cases are and so forth, please click that link, schedule some time with us. We'll be more than happy to go through that. Other than that, Rob, once again, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for the demo and what you've done with building the infrastructure for this. Everybody, once again, right, we're going to leave the call open for the next 5 minutes. If you have any more Q&A, please drop those into the chat. Other than that, this does conclude our session for today. Thanks everybody for joining.